Top 5 most expensive paintings ever sold. Hello everyone. Welcome to the Art Showcase. Today we are going to be looking at the paintings that take the top spots on the chart as the most expensive ever sold. Most of the works on the list are more modern pieces, as in works predominantly from the late 1800s to 1950s, as these tend to be the works that are not already owned by a museum. Many of the most famous masterpieces pre-1800 are deemed priceless, and it is unlikely that these works will ever go onto the auction block. The prices you will see have been converted into today's currency value in US dollars. Now for the video, the top 5 most expensive paintings ever sold. Number 5. Coming in at number 5 is the creatively titled Number 17A by Jackson Pollock. The work is an oil painting on fiberboard and was created in 1948. Its dimensions are 44 inches wide by 34 inches long. Pollock, the larger-than-life figure in the abstract art scene, often didn't name his work. It was an effort not to influence how the observer may see his paintings and instead form their own interpretations. Pollock was famous for his drip paint technique. He would often make an entire masterpiece without even touching the canvas. Or in Pollock's case, fiberboard. In this piece though, you can see 3 white brushstrokes prominently peering out of the Pollock painting. Alliteration much? Anyways, people who watched Pollock paint described his process as less of a painter and more of a dancer. Pollock would stand over top his work and let the paint drip down. On some of his larger works, Pollock would literally stand on top of his masterpiece. He would move side to side, in a chaotic but purposeful waltz across the canvas. Number 17A was bought in 2015 by Kenneth C. Griffin, a wealthy hedge fund manager. At the time of the purchase, it was the most expensive painting ever sold. A record sum of $200 million in a private sale. Number 17A has in the past been on loan to the Art Institute of Chicago, but it's now thought to be displayed in one of Griffin's private homes. Number 4. At number 4 we have French artist Paul Gauguin with his piece, When Will You Marry? The piece is an 1892 oil painting, 40 inches long by 30 inches wide. It depicts 2 native women in the Tahitian countryside. In an effort to explore his horizons and to leave the staleness of Western culture behind, Paul traveled to Tahiti. He was looking for a paradise, a place that he could make a pure form of art. In this work we find 2 young Tahitian women in an exotic field in the countryside. We see the juxtaposition between the 2 figures. The woman behind is wearing a European pink dress. Her demeanor and pose may hint that she is married. The pose and the style of her dress is a drastically different aesthetic than the woman in the foreground, who is dressed in a more traditional style Tahitian dress and with a more carefree look to her. An important feature of the painting is the white flower. This indicates that the woman is seeking a husband and open to courtship. This detail explains the meaning of the title, When Will You Marry? The painting evokes wondrous thoughts. Thoughts of life in a faraway and exotic land. It's a quite interesting piece. But is it $210 million interesting? Well, in 2014, the government of Qatar sure thought so. It was the most expensive painting ever sold, beating out our previous piece. It was reported at the time that the painting was sold for $300 million. But in reality, it was actually sold for $210 million. Number 3. Next up is one of a series of paintings by French artist Paul Cézanne. Painting number 5 was acquired by the government of Qatar in 2011 for a price estimated to be $275 million. This is the second piece that the Qatari government have on this list so far. The painting is of 2 working-class peasants at their local watering hole in France. Cézanne's painting does not show a boisterous card-playing scene. That was a common motif in his time. Instead, Cézanne was going for something in his own style. This piece is much more simplistic, more calm, and a quite ordinary depiction of 2 men relaxing and intently focusing on their cards. An unopened wine bottle in the background shows that these men are intently and singularly focused on the game at hand, putting even the delicious and tempting French wine on hold until they are through. It is thought that the 2 men, who were used as models, were local farm workers from the Cézanne family estate. Think of being a farm worker in France in 1894. Then being a model for a painting that 117 years later would be bought by the royal family and sovereign of a country that didn't even exist at the time. Sold for a cool $275 million, which today is a huge amount, but to a peasant farmer from 100 years ago, it would have been an unfathomable sum of money. It's quite the story, and it's quite a painting. Number 2. Willem de Kooning is the artist of our next piece. The Dutch-American painter was known for his abstract expressionism, or his action painting as he liked to call it. The painting we are going to look at is called Interchange. It was created in 1955 with oil paint on canvas which measured 79 inches long and 69 inches wide. Abstract art is famously difficult to analyze. I'm at a bit of a loss with this one, but let me know in the comment section what you think Interchange is trying to say. Kooning first sold Interchange in the late 1950s for $4,000, which is approximately $39,000 in today's money. About 60 years later it was purchased for a relatively small sum as far as art goes. Just kidding, it was sold for an extraordinary $300 million. So who is the intrepid art collector that would spend this amazing sum on this abstract masterpiece? Is it Bill Gates? Or Jeff Bezos perhaps? In short, no. However, if you guessed Kenneth C. Griffin, the hedge fund guy from our first painting, then you are correct. Interchange is currently on loan to the Art Institute of Chicago for those wanting to see it up close. Maybe in the future he will hang number 17A and Interchange next to each other in the same room. That would be fitting to see these two great works together, as Kooning and Pollock were friends, back in the New York art scene. Number 1. Now for the main event, the only Renaissance-era painting on the list. Up next is a masterpiece from another age entirely. Number 1 at an eye-watering, astoundingly amazing $450 million. The masterpiece is titled Salvator Mundi, created by the man and legend himself Leonardo da Vinci, painted between 1500 and 1510 with oil paints on a walnut panel. Salvator Mundi is Latin for Savior of the World. It is speculated that da Vinci was commissioned to paint the masterwork by none other than King Louis XII of France. This type of commission was likely for the king to use at his residence, so he could pay devotion to Jesus outside the confines of the church. The pose of Salvator Mundi was not created by Leonardo. He takes the inspiration for the pose from Byzantine iconography. Works such as this mosaic image of Christ Pantocrator in the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul. Just like the mosaic, Leonardo uses this type of religious iconography to guide him in his process. Often Jesus was pictured wearing a combination of both red and blue. In Leonardo's work he is adorned only in a Marian blue, the color often worn by the Virgin Mary. In the painting Jesus has his right hand extending outward and giving a blessing. In his left hand cradled carefully he is holding a clear crystal orb, with specks of spectral points of light glimmering and shining inside. In some paintings of Christ, the orb symbolizes the whole earth. However, Leonardo took it to new heights, by using the orb to represent not just the earth, but to represent the entire universe itself. In 2005 the painting was bought by a consortium of art dealers for a mere $10,000. The painting was seriously damaged by overpainting in a failed restoration previously. The neglected masterwork was in such bad shape that some experts thought it was a poor copy attempt. After careful examination through infrared pictures, it was discovered that small adjustments were made to Christ's hand. The hand and thumb position on the final painting were altered from the underlining draft original. This is usually an indication of an original work, as copies don't tend to have revisions made to them, as they are just painted exactly as the original. A heavy restoration process was undertaken. More experts in 2011 and 2012 authenticated that in fact this was the original long-lost master work, by Leonardo himself. After being authenticated, the painting was for a time exhibited in the National Gallery in London. In 2013 the painting was bought for $73 million by a Swiss dealer Yves Bouvier. The painting was then sold to a Russian collector named Dmitry Ryba, Love Lev for $127 million. The massive $56 million discrepancy between these two prices led to a 5-year dispute between the auction house and a Russian businessman, as the auction house was accused of conducting a fraudulent pricing scheme. Eventually, after the dispute was over, in 2017 the painting re-emerged for a final exhibition tour. This world tour took Leonardo's work to London, Hong Kong, San Francisco, and New York City. In New York it was auctioned by Christie's auction house. It was sold for $450 million. Salvator Mundi was acquired by Abu Dhabi's Department of Culture and Tourism. The piece was meant to be displayed at a museum in Abu Dhabi. Unfortunately, that never materialized, and it never was displayed. The painting appears to be in the possession of the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. Rumor has it that the painting adorns a wall on board Prince Mohammed bin Salman's super yacht. And for now, that's where we end the story of Salvator Mundi. At least for now. So let's recap. If you wanted to acquire all these paintings for your own personal collection, how much would that be? Number 17A, by Jackson Pollock, about $200 million. When Will You Marry? By Paul Gauguin, about $210 million. The Card Players, by Paul Cézanne, about $275 million. Interchange, by Willem de Kooning, $300 million. Salvator Mundi, by Leonardo da Vinci, $450 million. The grand total for all these paintings on this list is $1.435 billion. That amount of money is worth more than the gross domestic product of 18 countries. While these masterpieces might be worth $1 billion, spending time with y'all is priceless. So thanks for watching, have a good one.